Ava Gardner once called Frank Sinatra the love of my life. But behind the glamorous Hollywood image was a relationship so explosive that friends feared it would destroy them both. Their marriage was filled with screaming fights, jealousy, broken furniture, heavy drinking, and emotional wounds neither of them could escape. A lost interview now reveals the darker side of their romance. The painful moments Ava rarely spoke about publicly, and the shocking reasons she eventually grew to resent the man she once loved more than anyone else. So what really happened behind closed doors between Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra? And why, after all the chaos, heartbreak, and betrayal, could they never fully let each other go? Tonight, we're uncovering the unbelievable true story behind one of Hollywood's most passionate and destructive love affairs, the shady way they met. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra first met at a nightclub in 1943. At the time, Ava was married to actor Mickey Rooney, though the marriage was already falling apart amid reports of emotional turmoil and constant fighting. Sinatra, meanwhile, was married to Nancy Barbato and raising a young family. Even during that first meeting, the attraction between Ava and Frank was obvious, but their romance would not fully ignite until years later. Everything changed when they reunited at a party in Palm Springs in 1949. Sinatra was still married and had recently welcomed his third child, while Ava had already ended her troubled marriage to Artie Shaw. The chemistry between them was immediate and impossible to ignore. Sinatra later admitted he was stunned by how much Ava had changed, describing her as no longer the shy Southern girl from Hollywood, but a glamorous and unforgettable woman. Their first real night together quickly became legendary. The two stars slipped away from the party, drove around drunk through the streets, passionately kissed in the car, and even shot out streetlights along the road. Police eventually stopped them, though studio executives reportedly smoothed everything over behind the scenes, as often happened during Hollywood's golden era. While most people would have considered the night complete chaos, Ava told her sister the next morning that she had never had such a wonderful time in her life. The couple had an eventful wedding in 1951. Although Frank Sinatra had been married to Nancy Barbato for more than 10 years, he later admitted that the relationship was built more on comfort than true passion. "What I had mistaken for love was only the warm friendship Nancy had brought me," he once confessed, according to the Times. As his romance with Ava Gardner grew more intense, Sinatra realized he could no longer hide the affair. By then, tabloids were already following the pair closely because they openly attended events together, despite Sinatra still being married. At first, Nancy refused to give Sinatra a divorce. Eventually, however, she agreed after Gardner reportedly pushed Sinatra to choose between the two women once and for all. Ava later admitted she understood why Nancy fought to save her marriage. The divorce proved financially devastating for Sinatra, with Nancy receiving a large portion of his earnings, their home, and shares in Sinatra Music Corp. But Sinatra reportedly did not care about the money as long as he could finally be with Ava. Even after they were free to marry, the drama continued. The night before the wedding, Gardner allegedly received a letter from a woman claiming to have been Sinatra's lover for months, sending Ava into a furious rage. Still, the couple went ahead with the ceremony in Philadelphia in 1951, only days after Sinatra's divorce became official. According to Hollywood legend, Ava tripped over her wedding dress and fell while walking down the aisle, a moment many later saw as a warning sign of the turbulent marriage that lay ahead. They had a codependent relationship. From the very beginning, the relationship between Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra seemed fueled as much by conflict as passion. Even their honeymoon was reportedly filled with constant arguments and explosive fights. Biographer Lee Server later joked in Ava Gardner, "Love is nothing that nearly every photo of the couple from that trip showed them running, snarling, cringing, cowering, except for one taken from far away and from behind. According to Ava herself, both of them were drinking heavily and living in a dangerously codependent way. Every single night, we would have 3 or 4 martinis, big ones in champagne glasses, she later recalled. Then wine with dinner, then go to a nightclub and start drinking scotch or bourbon. I don't know how we did it. The constant alcohol only made Sinatra's legendary temper worse. Frank was known for violent mood swings and explosive outbursts, often directing his anger at the people closest to him. Their marriage became even more stressful because of Sinatra's rumored ties to organized crime figures. Ava reportedly grew furious one night when Frank interrupted an intimate moment to take a phone call from a mobster. Over time, the relationship began to feel less like a romance and more like emotional warfare. Sinatra himself once admitted as much, telling a friend, "When you're at war with a woman, you don't have any chance. The best you can hope for is an occasional truce." Ava Gardner helped Frank Sinatra secure better acting roles. In the early years of their marriage, Ava Gardner was the bigger star and the main source of income. She was thriving in Hollywood, earning major paychecks from films like Showboat, while Frank Sinatra was struggling through one of the lowest points of his career. During that period, Frank became intensely dependent on Ava emotionally. In her memoir, she recalled that no matter where she was in the world, Sinatra sent her daily telegrams telling her how much he loved and missed her. "He was a man who was desperate for companionship and love," she wrote. But along with that devotion came deep insecurity and jealousy. Sinatra constantly worried about Ava's handsome co-stars, and his possessiveness fueled many of their arguments. As his career and finances declined, the pressure only grew worse. At one point, Sinatra reportedly became so broke that he bought gifts for Ava using money from her own bank account. Ironically, Ava later admitted that Frank was easier to live with when his career was struggling. "We were happy when Frank was on the skids," she once said. "When he became successful again, his old arrogant self came back." Despite all the chaos between them, Ava still tried to help him professionally. Sinatra had fallen into depression over his fading fame and the guilt he carried from leaving Nancy Barbato and his children behind. Determined to help him recover, Ava used her influence in Hollywood to open doors for him. She ultimately played a major role in helping Sinatra land the part of Private Maggio in From Here to Eternity in 1953, the performance that revived his career and earned him an Academy Award. The couple never had any children. While filming Mogambo in 1952, Ava Gardner became pregnant. Although director John Ford reportedly urged her not to end the pregnancy, Ava felt emotionally unprepared to become a mother. Friends later claimed she was deeply fearful of motherhood and unsure she could handle raising a child while trapped in such a chaotic relationship and demanding career. Without telling Frank Sinatra, who was working in Hollywood at the time, Gardner chose to have an abortion. When Sinatra eventually found out, he reacted with intense anger and bitterness. According to his manager Hank Sanicola, Frank later said, "I should have beaten her expletive brains out for what she did to me and the baby, but I loved her too much." The incident became one of the most painful and emotionally damaging chapters of their marriage. Not long afterward, Ava became pregnant a second time and once again decided to terminate the pregnancy. This time, Sinatra accompanied her through the procedure despite how deeply upset he had been the first time. The experience left emotional scars on both of them and added even more strain to an already explosive relationship. Years later, Gardner admitted that Hollywood fame had given her success she never truly wanted. Reflecting on her life, she confessed that she regretted not having children or finding a more stable, peaceful existence. In one heartbreaking interview, she admitted, "I wish now I had the things most important to a woman: a good marriage, children, a better education." There was infidelity on both sides. "I hate cheating," Ava Gardner once admitted, according to The Times. "I won't put up with it." Yet despite those feelings, both Ava and Frank Sinatra were repeatedly unfaithful during their turbulent marriage. Ava became romantically involved with several men, including famous bullfighters Mario Cabré and Luis Miguel Dominguín. Sinatra reportedly became so jealous of Cabré that he fantasized about killing him. Rumors also linked Ava to billionaire Howard Hughes, though she denied ever having an affair with him. Over the years, there were even persistent rumors that Ava had a romantic relationship with Lana Turner, claims Turner publicly denied. Sinatra, however, was hardly faithful himself. In one especially cruel moment, he reportedly called Ava while lying in bed with another woman, seemingly trying to make her jealous. The incident deeply wounded her. "I was deeply hurt," Ava later admitted. "I knew then that we had reached a crossroads, not because we had fallen out of love, but because our love had so battered and bruised us that we couldn't stand it anymore." What frustrated Ava even more was the double standard surrounding their affairs. While tabloids endlessly focused on her relationships and portrayed her as reckless or immoral, Sinatra's infidelities were often ignored or excused. Ava believed the public judged her far more harshly simply because she was a woman, and the resentment over that hypocrisy stayed with her for years. Frank Sinatra and Ava Gardner divorced after 6 years. In 1953, after just 2 years of marriage, Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra separated, though their divorce would not become official until 4 years later. Ironically, the breakup happened just as Sinatra's Hollywood career was beginning its major comeback. Friends close to the couple later said their demanding careers constantly pulled them in different directions, leaving little room for stability or peace in the relationship. Sinatra took the separation especially hard. Deeply obsessed with Ava, he repeatedly begged her to return to him and spiraled into depression after she refused. During that period, he was hospitalized following an apparent suicide attempt. According to biographers, this was not the first time Sinatra had threatened to harm himself during their relationship. There had reportedly been several frightening incidents over the years, including emotional phone calls and one moment where he threatened suicide while Ava slept nearby. Ava later described his self-destructive behavior as a desperate cry for help. Over time, both eventually moved on to other relationships. Rumors linked Ava to figures like Fidel Castro, while Sinatra later married Mia Farrow, who was much younger than him. Ava famously mocked the relationship with her sharp sense of humor, joking, "I always knew Frank would wind up in bed with a little boy." Sinatra himself reportedly referred to Farrow as his child bride. But despite all the affairs, marriages, and years apart, many people close to Sinatra believed Ava Gardner remained the great love of his life, the one woman he never truly got over. They remained close friends for the rest of Ava Gardner's life. By the 1960s, Ava Gardner's struggles with alcohol had become far more serious. Drinking had long been her way of coping with emotional pain, dating back to her marriage to Artie Shaw, whose alleged emotional abuse deeply affected her. Over time, alcohol became less of a social habit and more of an escape from loneliness, heartbreak, and the pressures of fame. Despite everything they had been through, Frank Sinatra still loved her deeply and watched her decline with heartbreak. Actor Brad Dexter later recalled Sinatra looking at Ava one night and sadly saying, "She's the only woman I've ever been in love with in my whole life, and look at her. She's turned into a falling down drunk." Ava's drinking eventually became notorious in Hollywood circles. Actress Esther Williams later wrote that Gardner had gone from famous to infamous to notorious and was increasingly viewed as a danger to polite society because of her reckless behavior and public drunkenness. But Sinatra, who had struggled with substance abuse himself, never completely abandoned her. Rather than judge her, he reportedly tried to help her seek treatment and recover. Reflecting on the strange turn their relationship had taken, Sinatra once remarked, "Can you imagine? The way I used to chase Ava, and now she's my patient." Frank Sinatra was devastated by Ava Gardner's death. Toward the end of Ava Gardner's life, the balance in her relationship with Frank Sinatra had completely changed. Sinatra became one of the biggest entertainers in the world, a cultural icon selling out massive arenas and releasing legendary songs like My Way. Meanwhile, Ava's Hollywood career slowly faded, and by the late 1980s, she was reportedly struggling financially. As she grew older, Ava looked back on her marriage to Sinatra with both honesty and humor. "I'll always love him," she once admitted. "It was always great in bed. The troubles were all out of bed." But years of heavy drinking had severely damaged her health. In 1986, she suffered a stroke that left part of her body paralyzed. Even after everything they had been through, Sinatra remained emotionally connected to her. While Ava was hospitalized, he reportedly called her and said, "I love you, baby. It stinks getting old." He also sent her $50,000 to help cover medical expenses, though Ava reportedly found the gesture somewhat humiliating because she hated feeling dependent on anyone. In 1990, Ava Gardner died from pneumonia at the age of 67. Sinatra was devastated by the loss. "Ava was a great lady, and her loss is very painful," he later said publicly. He quietly paid for her funeral but chose not to attend because he feared media attention would turn the ceremony into a spectacle. Instead, he sent an enormous floral arrangement as a final tribute. According to his daughter Tina Sinatra, Frank never truly got over losing Ava Gardner.